Balmoral was supposed to be the one place where the royal family could breathe without cameras, without ceremony, and without the crushing weight of public duty. But when Princess Anne discovered that Queen Camilla was not merely attending the private gathering, she was hosting it, the silence inside the palace changed instantly. One decision, one invitation list, and one name at the top of it triggered a royal refusal no one expected. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Anne stared at the revised schedule longer than expected. Balmoral, the royal family's Scottish estate and private summer refuge, was never just a house to her. It was where Queen Elizabeth had guarded family memory and turned duty sacred. The Balmoral family gathering was meant to be a private seasonal meeting, a closed family occasion away from official crowds. Yet Camilla's name now sat at the top as host. Anne's hand rested near the paper. Then she set it down with care more dangerous than anger. Charles felt the pressure before a public word could be spoken. He understood that Anne's absence would not look like a diary problem or a polite excuse. It would look like a crack in the royal family's private wall. And the king knew cracks become public wounds. Camilla's role carried more than social meaning, because the host controls the first welcome, tone, and emotional center of the room. To Anne, that meant the queen consort commanded a space still wrapped in the late monarch's shadow. Camilla expected resistance, but not refusal. She had accepted the hosting role as proof that the new reign was settling into place, and she believed Charles wanted the family to see her not as a guest, but as part of the structure. Yet Anne saw something else. She saw a quiet transfer of memory. A name moved into a position that should have been handled with reverence. The question beneath her silence was brutal. Who approved this before telling her? A courtier watching from the doorway noticed Anne's face change first. The shock did not flare, it froze. She asked for no explanation, offered no performance, and gave no dramatic speech. She simply made her decision. Princess Anne would not attend the Balmoral gathering while Camilla hosted it. Because Anne never refused lightly, the palace understood this was not about one invitation. It was about something older, buried beneath Balmoral's polished calm. But before anyone could understand why Anne's answer was so final, they had to understand what Balmoral meant to the people now fighting over its memory. Behind palace doors, this was not just a disagreement over seating, schedules, or who welcomed guests at a Scottish estate. It was a collision between memory and monarchy. Princess Anne saw Balmoral as sacred ground. Charles saw it as a family gathering that needed order. Camilla saw it as a chance to step fully into her role. And William watched carefully, knowing the smallest gesture could reveal the deepest fracture. Anne had spent her life understanding the difference between duty and display. To her, Balmoral was not simply another royal property where names could be shifted and roles could be polished for convenience. It was the place where Queen Elizabeth's private rhythm had shaped the family for decades, where loyalty was not announced, but proven quietly. The late monarch had lived by small codes: who entered first, who sat where, who spoke for the family, and who understood when silence meant more than permission. Anne remembered those codes with almost painful precision, and that was why Camilla's new position cut so deeply. Camilla, however, did not see herself as an intruder. She saw a monarchy trying to move forward, and she believed her place beside Charles had to mean something beyond balcony appearances and formal ceremonies. The Queen Consort, a title meaning the wife of the reigning king, without the sovereign power of the monarch, wanted to be seen as part of the family's private center. She had endured years of cold glances, careful distance, and whispered judgment. Now, with Charles on the throne, she wanted Balmoral to recognize her not as a visitor waiting for approval, but as a woman standing firmly inside the new reign. Charles felt the danger in both directions. If he defended Camilla too strongly, he risked pushing Anne further away. If he softened Camilla's role, he would appear to admit that his wife still did not fully belong. The king understood that Balmoral mattered, because it carried Queen Elizabeth's, emotional authority. And because family unity there had always been read as a sign that the throne itself remained steady. His sister's refusal threatened more than one weekend. It threatened the image of a family still able to gather under one roof without old wounds reopening. William entered Charles's Cray study after the revised guest plan had already begun moving through private channels. The prince noticed Camilla's name at once. He did not speak immediately. He let the silence stretch until Charles looked up, and in that pause, father and son both understood the same terrible thing. Anne's refusal was not a temper, not pride, not theater. It was grief, sharpened into a decision. The hidden question now pressed against every wall of the palace. Was Camilla simply welcoming the family, or had someone decided that Balmoral itself should be reshaped around her presence? Anne believed she already knew the answer, because one earlier moment at that very estate had changed the way she looked at Camilla forever. And that suspicion did not begin with this invitation. It began with a single moment at Balmoral that Anne never forgot. Every royal conflict has a moment people later call the beginning, but those inside the family know the truth. The beginning is usually quiet. It happens over a dinner table, in a pause after a sentence, in the tightening of a jaw. For Anne, the trigger came months earlier, during a private Balmoral dinner, when Camilla made one remark that turned discomfort into resistance. Anne had arrived at that dinner, carrying the same careful discipline she had carried all her life. She knew Balmoral was not simply a royal setting, it was the private heart of Queen Elizabeth's world, where family rhythm mattered because it reminded everyone that the crown was also held together by memory. That night, the conversation moved from weather to guest lists, from family routines to the shape of the new reign. Then Camilla spoke with calm certainty and suggested that the old Balmoral way needed to be modernized under the new reign. The words were soft. The impact was not. Anne heard something sharper beneath that sentence. To others, it may have sounded like progress, a harmless comment about adapting to change. To her, it sounded like a hand reaching toward traditions that did not belong to Camilla to reshape. The new reign meant the period of Charles's rule as king. And for Anne, that reign had to respect what came before it, not sweep it aside in the name of comfort. She looked toward Charles, waiting for him to steady the room. He did not. The silence that followed became its own answer. Camilla felt the chill immediately, and embarrassment flashed into pride. She believed she had only said what everyone already knew. The monarchy could not live forever inside the habits of the past. Yet Anne saw no wisdom in rushing the family through grief. She rose from the table without drama, gave no speech, and left with the kind of control that made the room feel smaller after she was gone. Charles remained seated, strained and silent, trapped between the woman beside him and the sister, who had just shown him the cost of saying nothing. That dinner became the private wound behind the public refusal. Afterward, a trusted aide noticed that Anne's tone changed whenever Balmoral planning notes mentioned Camilla's involvement. She answered later, shorter, colder. She stopped treating those notes as routine because she no longer believed they were routine. Someone, somewhere, was preparing Camilla for a stronger role at Balmoral, and Anne understood the pattern before anyone dared name it. So when Camilla's name finally appeared as host, Anne did not feel surprise. She felt confirmation. The dinner remark had not faded. It had grown into policy, into placement, into a title at the top of a page. And to Anne, that meant the line she feared had now been crossed. So when the final invitation list arrived, Anne was not reacting to paper. She was reacting to a line she believed had finally been crossed. The confrontation did not begin with shouting. It began with Anne standing still, one hand on the back of a chair, while Charles waited for an answer he already feared. The room was too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes every breath feel like a warning. When Anne finally spoke, her words were controlled, but the message was devastating. She would not attend. Charles had asked for the meeting because he still believed the damage could be contained. A private sitting room meant a family room, away from aides, secretaries, and official eyes, and he wanted that privacy because this was no longer about a schedule. This was his sister, his wife, and the old life they had both inherited from the Queen. Anne looked at him with the calm of someone who had already made peace with the cost. The king asked her to reconsider, not with command, but with a brother's tired hope. He said Camilla's hosting role was meant to show unity, not erase the past. Anne heard the word unity and felt the wound sharpen. She had served the crown through storms, scandal, grief, and silence, but Balmoral carried a different weight. It was Queen Elizabeth's most private sanctuary, a family refuge where public rank was supposed to soften before memory. Anne told Charles that unity could not be forced by placing Camilla at the center of a house still, carrying the late monarch's presence. Her words did not shake. That made them worse. She was not trying to punish him. She was trying to stop him from mistaking authority for acceptance. Charles absorbed it like a blow. He was not only the king in that room. He was a husband, hearing his wife rejected, and a brother realizing his sister saw the decision as a betrayal of their mother's world. He defended Camilla carefully, saying she had endured enough distance, enough judgment, enough years of being made to stand just outside the family's emotional circle. But Anne did not soften. She reminded him that pain did not give anyone the right to step into another woman's sacred place too quickly. Then Anne asked the question that changed the room. Who approved her name as host before telling me? Charles did not answer at once. That hesitation said more than a denial ever could. Anne saw it immediately. The decision had not been a simple family choice made over breakfast or softened by affection. It had passed through hands, through private advice, through people who understood exactly what the title of host would mean at Balmoral. Charles finally tried to explain, but the silence had already confessed too much. Anne understood that Camilla's role had become part of a wider plan, a quiet reshaping of private royal space under the cover of family harmony. And if Balmoral could be altered this way, then nothing protected by memory was truly safe. But Anne's refusal was only the visible crack. Behind it stood a quieter battle over who truly controlled the royal family's private spaces. Power in the royal household is rarely announced. It moves through calendars, guest lists, seating plans, and the careful placement of names. At Balmoral, the question was no longer whether Camilla could attend. The question was, who had the authority to let her host? And when William studied the internal plan, he saw something Anne had already sensed. This was not just hospitality. It was positioning. William understood the danger, because royal power often hides inside ordinary words. A host is not simply the person who opens a door or welcomes relatives with polite warmth. At a Balmoral gathering, the host shapes the mood, controls the first greeting, guides the family rhythm, and sends a quiet message about who stands at the emotional center of the house. That mattered because Balmoral was still tied to Queen Elizabeth's memory, and any change there felt larger than a normal household adjustment. It was not just where people arrived, it was where belonging was silently measured. Charles saw the arrangement differently. To him, Camilla's role felt like a natural step in the new reign, a way to show that the queen consort was not living beside the monarchy as a guest, but inside it as family. He believed the family needed order after years of strain, and he believed his wife deserved a place that matched the life she now carried with him. Yet Anne saw the same decision as emotional overreach. She did not deny Camilla's position beside Charles. She questioned whether that position gave her the right to take symbolic command of Balmoral's private heart. William reviewed the schedule without rushing. Camilla's name appeared before several senior family members, and the placement did not feel accidental. The prince closed the folder, tapped one finger against the cover, and asked the question everyone had avoided. Had Anne been consulted before this plan was allowed to move forward? The silence around that question carried its own answer. If Anne had been warned earlier, the conflict might have stayed private. If she had been avoided until the decision hardened, then someone had gambled with family loyalty. The household team now looked less like neutral organizers and more like silent architects of a change they knew would wound. The deepest revelation was not that Camilla would attend. It was that the gathering had been designed to begin with her welcoming guests at Balmoral's main entrance, a gesture heavy with meaning. That first welcome would make her the emotional gatekeeper of a place Anne still associated with her mother's final authority. William felt the shape of the crisis forming. If Anne stayed away, others would have to decide whether attending looked like support for Camilla or betrayal of Anne's stand. One refusal could become a quiet family vote, and once that happened, even Charles would struggle to control what Balmoral had become. And once one royal refusal threatened to become a silent family vote, the fallout moved faster than anyone inside the palace expected. Nothing exposes a royal fracture like an empty chair. Before any statement, before any official explanation, before the public even knew what had happened, the household understood the meaning of Anne's absence. Her place at Balmoral was not a detail, it was a signal. And when Camilla learned that Anne had refused to come, the victory she expected from hosting suddenly felt much colder. Camilla did not answer at first. The message had been delivered with careful words, the kind palace staff use when they are trying to hide panic behind politeness. Anne would not attend. No dramatic explanation, no public attack, no letter meant to wound, just refusal. The queen consort sat alone with the seating chart in front of her, removed her glasses, and stared at the empty space where Anne's name should have settled the room. Hosting had been meant to prove belonging. Now it had exposed rejection. Charles insisted the gathering must continue. He told the household that Balmoral could not be held hostage by one absence. Yet even as he said it, the strength behind the words began to thin. A Balmoral gathering mattered, because it was never just a dinner or a weekend of family conversation. It was the private sign that the royal house could still gather under one roof after public storms. Anne's refusal carried moral weight, because she was not known for emotional theater. She was known for duty. If she stepped away, people would ask what line had been crossed. Anne remained firm. She told a trusted aide that some places must be respected, even when power changes hands, and the simplicity of that sentence made it harder to dismiss. She was not trying to embarrass Charles. She was not trying to humiliate Camilla. She believed Balmoral still belonged first to memory, and memory could not be rearranged around a new host simply because the crown had changed hands. Her grief had become discipline. Her discipline had become defiance. William and Catherine now stood at the edge of the same storm. Their attendance could be read as support for Camilla's hosting role. Their absence could be read as support for Anne. That was the trap. The prince understood that every choice would become a message, and the princess knew that silence could be just as powerful as speech. The household began whispering less about logistics and more about loyalty. The gathering no longer looked like unity. It looked like a test. Aides tried to soften the schedule, adjust the order, and find language that could explain Anne's empty chair without admitting what it meant. But the truth had already moved through the palace faster than any official note. Camilla's role had not healed the family. It had forced everyone to choose how much of the old Balmoral they were willing to surrender. And that choice brought William into the one room where the conflict could no longer hide behind schedules or ceremony. By the time William entered the room, the argument had grown beyond Anne and Camilla. It had become a question about inheritance, memory, and the emotional rules of the new reign. There were no private secretaries present, no careful notes, no official language to soften the edges. Just a father, a son, and the painful realization that Balmoral had become the battlefield for Big King. Everything left unsaid. William knew this conversation could not be handled through aides or polished palace language. He had watched the crisis move from one name on a guest plan to something far more dangerous. A test of whether the family still understood the difference between authority and acceptance. Charles sat with the strain of a man who had tried to make one decision serve two purposes. He wanted to honor Camilla, but he also wanted Balmoral to feel whole. The king believed those wishes could live together. His son was no longer sure they could. Charles spoke first, and for once, the defense sounded less like command and more like confession. He admitted he had believed Camilla hosting the gathering would help normalize her place, the family's private life. Normalize meant making something feel accepted and ordinary after years of tension. And for him, that mattered, because Camilla had spent so long standing under judgment. He wanted his wife to be seen not as someone tolerated beside him, but as someone received by the family he had spent a lifetime trying to hold together. William listened without interrupting. Then he chose his words with the caution of a man carrying both loyalty and warning. He told Charles that acceptance could not be demanded in a place still defined by Queen Elizabeth's memory. Balmoral was not neutral ground. It was a house where grief still had a voice, where Anne's loyalty to the late monarch gave her refusal a force no court announcement could erase. The prince understood Camilla's pain, but he also understood Anne's line, and that was what made the moment so heavy. Charles felt exposed. He had expected resistance, but not this quiet agreement with Anne's deeper point. He pushed back, saying the monarchy could not remain frozen in old habits forever. William did not deny that. He only said the family could move forward without making memory feel replaced. The words landed hard because they carried no cruelty. They carried truth. Then William pushed the seating chart back across the table. The gesture was small, but the meaning was unmistakable. He told Charles the gathering had to change if it was going to survive. Not disappear, not collapse. Change. Camilla could attend, but her role could not be allowed to look like command over Balmoral's emotional center. Charles finally understood what Anne's refusal had become. It was not rebellion. It was a warning about emotional legitimacy, the kind of acceptance that no title can create by force. And once the king understood that, the original plan could no longer stand. By morning, the palace had made its adjustment, but outside the gates, the world was already beginning to understand what Anne's absence meant. The public did not need a palace confession to recognize a royal fracture. One missing name was enough. By sunrise, the story had escaped Balmoral's stone walls and entered the national imagination. It was no longer a private disagreement about hosting duties. It was a public symbol. Princess Anne had drawn a line, and millions understood exactly why that line mattered. By morning, the silence had become impossible to manage. A major Sunday newspaper ran a stark front page with Balmoral's gates beneath the headline, "Anne stays away," and those 3 words did what no palace statement could undo. They gave the absence a meaning. They turned a private refusal into a national judgment. The Balmoral program had already been adjusted behind closed doors, but outside those doors, the public had reached its own conclusion. Anne had not merely declined an invitation. She had defended the emotional ground of the late queen. Charles read the coverage without speaking. The king had faced public storms before, but this one cut differently, because it did not begin with scandal or accusation. It began with family memory. A morning broadcaster framed the story as a clash between royal memory and the new queen. Place at the family table, and Charles understood the danger in that sentence. The public was not debating seating charts. They were asking whether the monarchy still knew how to respect the woman who had held it together for 70 years. Camilla felt the humiliation settle slowly. She had wanted the gathering to show acceptance, strength, and a new rhythm for the family. Instead, the story presented her as the reason Anne stayed away. The queen consort was not being judged for what she said in public, but for what her presence seemed to take from Balmoral. That made the wound harder to answer. A speech could not fix it. A smile could not soften it. Even Charles's support could not fully protect her from the meaning people had attached to Anne's empty place. Near Windsor Castle, a small crowd gathered with flowers, not in protest, but in quiet feeling. One woman told a nearby reporter that Anne had stood up for the late Queen's house, and that single sentence traveled quickly because it captured what many already felt. Balmoral mattered because it was more than royal land. It was the symbol of private loyalty, and Anne's refusal made people believe that loyalty still had a guardian. Inside the palace, the final adjustment was made with careful speed. Charles, not Camilla, would formally welcome the family when the gathering began. The change was quiet, but its meaning was loud. Anne had forced the monarchy to step back from a gesture it once believed it could control. Her refusal had worked, but it had also left a permanent mark on everyone involved. And when the gathering finally began, the most powerful presence at Balmoral was not the person hosting, it was the woman who refused to come. In the end, Princess Anne did not need to raise her voice to change the course of the gathering. She did not need a speech, a public statement, or a dramatic exit before the cameras. Her absence did all of it. At Balmoral, where every room still carried Queen Elizabeth's shadow, Anne's refusal became a final act of loyalty, not against the monarchy, but for the memory she believed the monarchy could not afford to lose. Anne had made her decision, and by the time the family gathered, everyone felt the cost. Balmoral, the Scottish royal estate long treated as a private family refuge, no longer felt like a place where the tension could be hidden behind polite greetings. The gathering continued, but its emotional center had shifted. Camilla was present, yet Anne's empty place spoke louder than any welcome could. The Queen Consort, the wife of the reigning king without sovereign power, had been meant to stand as the symbol of a settled new reign. Instead, she became the reminder that acceptance cannot be arranged by seating charts or titles. Charles stepped into the role that had first been given to Camilla, and that quiet change carried more meaning than any official explanation. The king formally welcomed the family, not because the original plan had vanished, but because it had been wounded beyond repair. He understood now that Balmoral mattered because it held the late Queen's private spirit, and because the family's behavior there became a test of whether memory still had protection. Charles had authority, but authority alone could not heal grief. He had power, but power could not make Anne pretend that nothing sacred had been moved too quickly. Camilla did not collapse under the weight of the moment, but she could not escape what it taught her. She had wanted to belong at the center of royal family life, and in public, she had already stood beside Charles through duty, ceremony, and judgment. But Balmoral was different. It asked for something deeper than rank. It asked for emotional permission. The Queen Consort learned that a place shaped by Queen Elizabeth could not be claimed through a hosting role, while the family still carried unspoken mourning. Anne stood apart from the gathering, calm but saddened, knowing victory had come with pain. She had protected a boundary, but she had also exposed a wound inside her own family. William understood the warning clearly. The prince saw that the monarchy's future could not survive by erasing old loyalties. It had to honor them carefully, or every attempt to move forward would feel like betrayal. Anne's refusal proved the final truth of Balmoral. Memory came before power. Even a queen could not host her way past the grief still living inside the royal family. This was the moment Balmoral reminded the monarchy that tradition is not protected by ceremony alone. It is protected by the people brave enough to say no when memory is being moved too quickly. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.